Something strange is happening in America. You're working harder than ever, but your paycheck buys you less. Groceries, gas, appliances, even toothpaste, everything costs more. And no, it's not just inflation anymore. It's something buried deeper in the system. A quiet shift that no one voted for, but everyone is paying for. They're called tariffs, economic weapons, we're told, meant to punish foreign countries and protect American industry. But in 2025, those same tariffs are showing up in your receipts, your rent, and your credit card balance. So here's the question. If tariffs are supposed to defend America, why do they feel like they're draining Americans? Who's really paying the price for this trade war, and who's actually winning? Walk into any store in America right now, a Target, a Home Depot, a local appliance shop, and you'll hear the same thing from both sides of the counter. Prices just keep going up, and no one really knows why anymore. But behind the scenes, a major factor is now hitting American consumers in ways they never expected: tariffs. As of July 1st, 2025, the US government rolled out a new wave of tariffs aimed at curbing transshipped goods, especially Chinese products rerouted through countries like Vietnam and Mexico. Goods from Vietnam now face a 20% tariff, and any item suspected of being a disguised Chinese export faces a massive 40% penalty. This includes everything from furniture to clothing to electronics. These aren't abstract moves on trade spreadsheets. These are real, felt costs. A recent Moody's Analytics report estimates that the average American household will pay an extra $900 this year, directly linked to tariff-related price hikes. That's not just for high-end imports or luxury goods. It's diapers, it's kitchen supplies, it's tools, car parts, and building materials. What's more, this is happening even while overall inflation is supposedly under control. In fact, headline inflation dropped to 2.3% by June 2025. Yet grocery prices are still up 4.1% year over year, and household goods have seen a 6 to 8% bump, depending on the region. The culprit isn't just demand. It's a combination of supply chain disruptions, trade policy shocks, and supplier markups, all made worse by uncertainty over what will be taxed next. Small businesses are also feeling the squeeze. In Los Angeles, a family-owned HVAC repair company recently shared that they've had to increase service prices by 15% after a surge in imported component costs, parts they used to get from Asia for a fraction of the current price. Meanwhile, in Texas, a hardware distributor that used to rely heavily on Vietnamese imports is now losing contracts due to sudden, unpredictable price hikes, forced to explain to clients why tool sets that were once $80 now cost over $100. And it's not just business owners or manufacturers. Consumers are now caught in a bizarre situation. Tariffs meant to protect American workers are quietly punishing American families. Because in today's global economy, nearly everything we buy has some foreign connection. And when those links get taxed, the end user, not the exporter, ends up footing the bill. Add to that retaliatory tariffs from US trade partners. Countries like China, Mexico, and even Vietnam are now quietly increasing barriers on American exports, meaning Midwest farmers, auto parts suppliers, and machinery manufacturers are seeing orders slow down, inventories pile up, and cash flow tighten. In other words, what was sold as a tool to protect American jobs may now be contributing to job insecurity, price instability, and economic stress, especially for the people Washington claims to defend. It's no longer just a policy debate. It's a nationwide financial pressure cooker, and it's hissing louder by the day. To understand why Americans are paying more, even when they're not buying foreign goods directly, we need to look at the deeper logic driving these tariffs. On paper, tariffs are designed as tools of leverage. They're supposed to protect domestic industries, punish unfair foreign practices, and rebalance trade relationships that have long favored other countries, particularly China. But in 2025, the reality is far more complex, and the pain being felt on the ground wasn't exactly in the brochure. The current tariff escalation began not with one dramatic announcement, but with a series of subtle shifts, mostly under the radar. After Donald Trump returned to the White House in January 2025, trade policy swung back to a hardline posture. His administration revived the America First agenda, expanding tariffs not only on Chinese goods but also on countries accused of acting as transit points, namely Vietnam, Malaysia, and Mexico. The core claim: Chinese manufacturers are bypassing US tariffs by routing goods through these nations, repackaging them with new country of origin labels and slipping them back into the American market under lower tax rates. Whether proven or not, in every case, the administration responded with force. A 40% tariff on transshipped goods suspected of Chinese origin, a 20% blanket tariff on direct imports from Vietnam, tighter scrutiny on Mexican and Southeast Asian export categories, especially in electronics, apparel, and furniture. But why would these measures, meant to punish cheaters and bring jobs home, hit American consumers so hard? The answer lies in how deeply globalized US supply chains have become. Take a basic power drill. It may be branded by an American company, assembled in Mexico, built with components from Vietnam, using circuitry sourced from Taiwan and rare earth metals refined in China. Even if the drill looks domestic, its price is the sum of multiple international costs. When any one link in that chain is taxed, especially at 40%, that price rises all the way down the line. And while large corporations may have the resources to shift production, small and mid-sized businesses often do not. They're trapped. They can't quickly reshore operations, and switching to US-made alternatives, if they exist at all, often comes with higher costs, longer lead times and lower margins. The result? They pass the cost to consumers, shrink operations, or in some cases shut down. Then there's the pricing behavior of corporations. Some businesses use tariffs not just to cover costs, but to pad profits. When a new tariff hits, even companies unaffected by it might raise prices, simply because the market expects it. It becomes a domino effect, detached from actual production cost. Meanwhile, retaliatory measures from affected countries worsen the situation. In June 2025, Vietnam quietly announced tighter customs on US agricultural goods. Mexico responded with new fees on American-made auto parts. These moves hurt US exporters and trigger layoffs in sectors that depend on foreign markets, especially in farming, heavy equipment, logistics. Another problem: the lack of domestic alternatives. Protectionist policies are only effective if there's a viable replacement at home. But decades of outsourcing and deindustrialization have left many US industries hollowed out. You can tax Chinese semiconductors, but you can't snap your fingers and build a Texas chip factory overnight. The Biden administration tried to lay some groundwork through the CHIPS Act, clean energy incentives, and infrastructure rebuilding. But that momentum stalled. And the Trump team isn't waiting for factories to catch up. They're acting now, based on a worldview that sees trade as a zero-sum battlefield. At the center of it all is this paradox. Tariffs are being used as a weapon to build strength, but they're firing before the armor is finished. And for working-class Americans, that means catching the economic shrapnel while the system tries to reconfigure itself. In theory, tariffs are aimed at overseas producers, foreign governments, and massive global corporations. But in practice, the burden falls on the everyday American, especially those with the least room to absorb it. Let's start at the household level. Families earning under $75,000 a year spend a greater share of their income on goods directly affected by tariffs: clothing, electronics, kitchenware, household cleaning products. These aren't luxury purchases. These are basic needs. And when those prices climb 10, 20, or 30%, it hits differently when your budget is already stretched thin. A study from the Brookings Institution, published in late June 2025, found that the bottom 60% of earners are shouldering more than 70% of tariff-related cost increases, primarily because they can't afford to substitute higher-end locally made products. A higher-income family might swap a $300 imported coffee machine for a $500 US-made one. A low-income household can't. Meanwhile, middle-class homeowners trying to renovate or maintain their properties are getting squeezed. The cost of cabinets, tiles, screws, insulation, and HVAC parts, much of which is imported from Southeast Asia, has jumped significantly. That $15,000 kitchen remodel now costs over $20,000. Some are pausing projects entirely. Others are taking on more debt. Then there are small businesses, particularly those with razor-thin margins, the engine of American employment. In places like Iowa, Alabama, and Pennsylvania, local manufacturers, repair shops, and distributors have no buffer. A 20% spike in material costs often means having to lay off workers or hike prices. Either way, someone suffers. Take, for instance, a small machine parts factory in Akron, Ohio. It employs 28 people and relies on precision components sourced from Vietnam and Taiwan. After the July tariff hike, its input costs rose by 14% in under 3 weeks. The factory now faces two choices: lay off staff or raise prices and risk losing customers to larger competitors. In the auto repair industry, mom-and-pop garages are scrambling. A brake rotor set that once cost $40 now costs over $60. Wrenches, diagnostic tools, and even basic filters, all imported from Asia, have become unpredictable in both price and availability. Customers push back. Mechanics eat the loss. Trust erodes. But perhaps the most quietly destabilizing impact is on regional economies tied to logistics, agriculture, and trade. At the US-Mexico border, import traffic through Laredo, Texas dropped 12% in June alone, as tariff scrutiny triggered delays and cancellations. Warehouses are laying off workers. Truckers are taking fewer jobs. The ripple effect is visible in gas stations, diners, and corner stores along the I-35 corridor. In the Midwest, farmers are facing double jeopardy: rising costs for imported fertilizer and machinery parts, and shrinking overseas demand due to retaliatory tariffs on corn and soy. Some are already behind on loan payments. Others are tapping emergency credit to make it through harvest. Even major cities are not immune. In New York and California, import-dependent industries, fashion, electronics, furniture, hospitality, are quietly adjusting menus, delaying shipments, raising service fees. A $12 sandwich becomes $14. A $59 hotel cleaning fee becomes $75. Tariffs don't show up on receipts, but they are embedded in the inflation we still feel. And then there's the second-order effect: credit pressure. As households and businesses absorb higher costs, they lean harder on credit cards and financing. In May 2025, credit card balances hit a record $1.37 trillion, and delinquency rates rose to 3.8%, the highest since before the pandemic. That's not just a coincidence. That's people trying to keep up and falling behind. In the end, the people most affected by tariffs are not on the front lines of policy. They're on the front lines of daily survival. They're not strategists or diplomats. They're clerks, cashiers, truckers, mechanics, farmers, daycare owners, and shift workers, each one navigating a system that increasingly asks them to pay for economic decisions they didn't make and can't control. In theory, tariffs are a macroeconomic lever, numbers on a balance sheet, a negotiation tool in a global chess match. But in real life, they take shape in the form of receipt totals, utility bills, employee schedules, and daily trade-offs. And no one understands that better than the people trying to keep things running with shrinking margins. Marcus, a machinist in Dayton, Ohio, has been at the same metal shop for 17 years. His job depends on precision parts that are now caught up in the latest round of tariffs. We're told it's about punishing China, he says, wiping his hands on a grease-stained rag. But my paycheck's going to groceries and gas. They just cut overtime again. So who's really being punished? His employer used to order bulk fasteners from Vietnam, now hit with a 20% tariff. Domestic alternatives exist, but they cost 30 to 40% more and come with longer lead times. In the meantime, Marcus's hours are being shaved, and his co-workers are quietly applying for jobs at Amazon warehouses that offer more stability, for now. Karen, a single mother of 2 in Milwaukee, runs a licensed daycare out of her home. She stocks diapers, snacks, toys, and basic cleaning supplies, most of which are impacted by import cost hikes. It's death by 1,000 paper cuts, she says. Baby wipes went from $1.49 to $2.29. That doesn't sound like much until you're buying 10 packs a week. The parents I serve are also tight on money, so I can't raise my rates. I'm stuck. She's now operating at a loss 2 days a week, but keeps the daycare open out of obligation to her clients, many of whom are essential workers with no other childcare options. In Queens, New York, Jin, a small electronics store owner, faces a different problem: mistrust and confusion. My customers think I'm jacking up prices to make a profit, he says. But every month, the distributor sends a new list. What used to cost me $38 now costs $50, and I still have to pay rent, utilities, and taxes. Gin used to import directly from a Vietnamese supplier. Now, after the 40% transit tariff kicked in, he's had to switch to a US middleman who charges more and delivers slower. He's thinking of converting half the shop into a phone repair booth just to survive. In Fresno, California, Luis, a second-generation almond grower, says he's caught in a geopolitical mess that makes no sense from the ground. We're not the ones sending goods through Vietnam, he says, but now that country's taxing our almonds in retaliation. My buyers in Asia pulled 2 big orders last month. That's $80,000 gone. He's had to delay hiring for the summer harvest. His son, who was supposed to take over part of the business, is instead driving for Uber in Sacramento. Even in more urban white-collar settings, the impact is visible. A software firm in Austin had plans to upgrade its office furniture from a Vietnamese supplier. The deal collapsed after the July tariff hike pushed the cost up 22%. The CEO, in an internal Slack message, put it bluntly. We're not a manufacturing company, but somehow we're now in the middle of a trade war. These voices reveal a common theme. Tariffs, once imagined as a distant policy issue, have become deeply personal. They distort daily decisions, erode trust between businesses and customers, and force compromises that ripple across families, neighborhoods, and industries. They also reveal a subtler form of harm: uncertainty. The rules keep changing. New countries are added to watch lists, exemptions are granted, then revoked. For small businesses and households alike, there's no clear timeline, no visible win, and no explanation they can rely on. For many Americans, the emotional toll isn't just about paying more, it's about realizing that they're collateral in a game they never agreed to play. Tariffs were never supposed to be invisible taxes on everyday life. They were sold to the American people as strategic shields, tools to defend national strength, rebuild industries, and keep foreign competitors in check. But somewhere along the way, the logic shifted. What was meant to protect the American middle class has increasingly become something it must endure. Today, the pain is subtle, dispersed, and hard to trace. It doesn't look like a headline. It looks like a parent skipping the organic option at the grocery store, a contractor delaying payroll, a teenager working weekends to help cover car insurance. It looks like choices made under pressure that came from decisions far removed from the lives it affects. And this is where the real uncertainty lies. If tariffs are here to stay, and all signs suggest they are, what kind of economy are we building around them? Will these policies ever lead to lower dependence on foreign manufacturing? Will they truly bring back durable, middle-class jobs in steel, tech, or auto production? Or are we propping up a narrative that no longer fits the shape of a globalized world? Because right now, for many Americans, the benefits remain theoretical. The costs, on the other hand, show up with brutal consistency, in receipts, bank statements, and credit card interest. And the question no one seems ready to answer is, how long can people keep absorbing it? Washington talks in frameworks. Households live in dollars. As new tariffs are considered and global supply chains continue to reorganize, one truth has become harder to ignore. Economic strategy has a human footprint, and every policy has a payer. So the next time someone tells you tariffs are working, ask for whom. That's all for today's episode. If you've made it this far, thank you. Not just for listening, but for caring enough to ask harder questions about the world around you. Tariffs may not dominate the headlines, but they're shaping the price of your groceries, the future of your job, and the balance of power between nations. And sometimes, the most invisible forces are the ones that affect us the most. This is Observer Malik, and if today's story gave you a different perspective, consider sharing it, subscribing, or just having a conversation with someone about what you're seeing and feeling in your own life. Because economic policy isn't just about numbers, it's about people. Until next time, stay sharp, stay grounded, and keep observing.